This video is part of an ongoing series to show you how to clean the controls on NuTone intercom system remote stations. This is a model 2570 5-inch indoor speaker. The 2570 was used exclusively on intercom systems model N2561s and N2562s. They were in production from 1957 until the end of 1974. On this station, you see you have 4 different controls. You have a volume control at the top. You have a mode or selector switch in the center. This is a 3-position switch. You have standby, radio intercom, and monitor. And then you have 2 intercom control switches. This is outside, so you have outside, listen, and talk. And inside, you have talk, listen, and special listen. The problem with controls on all intercom stations are on the back side of the controls is normally open to the wall cavity, and over the years dirt and dust filters down through the wall cavity and the switches become dirty. The dirt on the switches holds moisture, and the moisture causes the contacts to oxidize so they don't make a good connection. It's not uncommon on this model of speaker for the volume controls to become so incredibly hard to turn that you virtually can't do it. The selector switches also can become very hard to turn, and the lever action intercom switches become dirty and gummy and they don't work properly. So this is a relatively simple speaker to clean. You'll see why in a minute. Really all that you need to do this once you take the speaker off the wall is your deoxit D5. You should have a rag and perhaps a soft bristle brush, which I'll show you what that's for in a second. Here's a close-up view of the inside talk and listen lever switch and the inside talk, listen, and special listen lever switch. These 2 controls are the most problematic on this type of speaker. The reason being, these are spring-loaded lever switches, so if you push it to the side, it's designed to spring back to the center, which is the at-rest position. You can push it both to the right or to the left. You'll notice how the outside speaker switch, it snaps back to the center very quickly. The inside lever switch is a different story. If we push it to the left and let it go, you'll see how it moves back to the center very slowly in comparison to the outdoor speaker switch. And there you can see it's even worse. We'll move it to the right, which is the inside talk position, and you can see how it very slowly creeps back to the center. It's not uncommon for these switches to become so gummy that when you move it to the right, it will creep back, and as the spring which tensions the switch loses its tension as it reaches towards the center, it'll lose enough of its tension where it won't make it quite back to the at-rest position. This causes a problem with intercom system operations because the system acts as if someone were standing there holding the switch in the talk position all the time. On the back of the station, you can see the 5-inch diameter 45 ohm NuTone speaker cone. You have the terminal block for the remote station wiring that comes from the master station. It's labeled in the colors of the different pairs. Again, this is an 8-wire system. 8-wire NuTone systems have, along with the normal 6-wire, which is red pair, orange pair, black pair, there's also a blue pair. And then one strand of each pair will have a white stripe for polarity. You'll notice here also, just as a point of interest, this speaker is from January 1965. On the side, below the terminal block, you have the volume control, the selector switch, and the 2 intercom control or fan switches. These are the ones that generally need to be cleaned at the most. Volume control next, and the selector. Here's a better view of the controls. You have the 2 intercom fan switches, the selector switch, and the volume control. even though these are very old and their design dates from 1965, these are very high quality switches for 1965. These are not dissimilar to what you'd find in expensive electronics bench test equipment. They're very long lasting, and this is primarily just maintenance that never gets done. So we'll start with the volume control. One tip about the volume control, you'll notice that it has a metal body and it has a phenolic resin or plastic back onto it, which is held in place with these little bent over tabs. Don't unbend the tabs thinking that you can take this apart and do a better job cleaning it. If you bend the tabs to straighten them out enough to take the back off, chances are when you bend them back over to hold the back on, you'll break the tabs off and the volume control will be ruined. These types of switches are hard to find nowadays. We're really down to using good used controls because these parts are no longer available to buy new from NuTone. When cleaning the volume control, the goal is to get the deoxit inside the volume control. Spraying it around on the outside of it isn't really going to do you any good. So what you need to do is you need to find little access points to spray into. On this particular volume control, there's a little hole in the back, in the center, which is good. And also, in most of these types of volume controls, there'll be small lugs on this coming out of one side of the volume control, and this is where the wires are soldered on, and where the lugs go into the body of the volume control, there'll be little gaps and spaces which you can spray into also. Once again, as with all cleaning, this is a less is more project. You don't need to flood the control and waste a lot of the cleaner. You just start off with a little bit and work it into the control and judge how effective you're being before you spray any more. So using the little extension nozzle off the can of cleaner, I'm going to spray a little bit in the hole, and I'm going to spray a little bit inside the gap by the solder lug, and I'm going to work the control back and forth with the knob, and immediately you can feel it begin to free up, and it moves a lot easier than it did before we cleaned it. So now I'm going to rotate it to the other position, spray a little more, and rotate it again. That's basically all that needs to be done. It's not wrong at all to do this while the system is still connected and actually while the radio is playing. If you do it that way, you can judge how effective your cleaning is being, because as you rotate the control, if it's still staticky, spray it again, rotate it some more until it cleans itself up to the point where the static's gone and you're happy with what it's at. So now we'll clean the selector or mode switch. This is a rotary switch, and you can see there are several contact points around the body of the switch. These are the points that are going to be cleaned. So again, you only need to spray a little bit and then rotate the switch. This is only a 3-position switch, so it doesn't turn very far, and you can see the detent lock, which is this little plastic piece, stops it at each location. There will always be some resistance as you turn it because it snaps into each position as you turn it, so you work it back and forth. Generally, I'll spray it twice, and that's pretty much all you need. Again, if you do this while the system is on, you can assess how effective you've been by how well it operates and how much it's improved. Now we're going to look at the 2 fan switches, top and bottom. These switches generally have a lot of dirt accumulation built up on them because as the speaker sits on the wall, these switches sit horizontally. They're like little shelves that stick into the wall cavity, and the dirt and dust filters down over them and it piles up on them. That's where your bristle brush comes into play. This is a really good tool if you have, this is a pastry brush that I bought at the cooking store. It works really well. If you have an old paintbrush, that works really well too. You can just get in there and it will very easily and quickly brush away the dirt. And you can see immediately how much better it is. Once you've done that, if there's a little bit you can't get to, you can use a can of compressed air and blow away the rest. Once you've done that, cleaning this is a lot like cleaning the Selector remote switch. It's just turned up on its side. So again, we're going to spray it a little bit, and by using the lever on the front, I'm going to operate the switch, and perhaps you can see the contacts moving inside. Immediately once you spray it, you can feel that it's freed up a lot. It's a lot more springy on the return than it has been. Now, cleaning the bottom switch is just like cleaning the top switch. Spray a little cleaner on it. These switches have contacts on both the tops and the bottoms, so you'll need to spray each side a little bit. And also spraying the spring mechanism, which is this metal part, is good because it helps clean up the pivot point, which is one of the things that causes it to get sticky. Here you can see the spring being tensioned and then popping the switch back, and then again in the second position. Now that I've cleaned it, the action is much better than it was before. These springs can be problematic. They do break from fatigue because of their age, and when that happens, there's nothing to return the switch to its center at rest position, and in those cases this entire switch will have to be replaced. Since we're down to used switches, finding one can be a problem. Now that the switches have been cleaned, you'll be able to see the difference. The outside lever switch works about the same as it did before, although when I push it right or left, you can feel the difference in the amount of resistance in the switch because it's been cleaned. But notice how much the inside switch has changed. Now when we push it to the left, it snaps back immediately and back to the right, and then I'll let go and it's right back to center instead of creeping back to the center slowly. Now that you've cleaned the controls on your 2570, move on to the next speaker in your house and clean that. A lot of people tell me that as they go through the process of cleaning the controls on their intercom speakers, by the time they get to the very last speaker in their house, they realize that they've become better at the cleaning and they'll go back and do the first speakers again. And in some cases you might find that after a couple weeks, you may want to go through, if you have one or two stations that have become slightly staticky again on the volume controls, maybe give those another little spray to clean them up again. You have to remember a lot of these speakers have never been cleaned. You know, this was from 1965. It's 50 years old, and this may be the first time it's ever actually been cleaned. Cleaning the controls on your speakers is general maintenance, and basically you do it when it needs to be done. Speakers that get used often will need it more frequently than ones that never get used, but eventually they all need to be cleaned.